is up, you guys? Film Fan 0599 here again, and happy Halloween to all of you. And as for a Halloween special, I figured I would finally round out my Evil Dead series of reviews. So basically, if you've been following my channel since 2015, you know that each year I've been reviewing one Evil Dead movie. In 2015 I did The Evil Dead, in 2016 I did Evil Dead 2, and last year I did Army of Darkness. And this year we're going to finally round out all those series of reviews with the remake of The Evil Dead that came out in 2013. So here we go. So The Evil Dead stars Jane Levy, and what this film is basically about, when their friend is not really in the greatest of places, she's kind of OD'd, she's been having some trouble and stuff like that, they decide to go to this cabin that their brother and their mother used to go to all the time with her. So, her brother along with a couple of other friends go to this cabin, and they discover something about this cabin that is really weird, and then there's this book, and let's just say some weird stuff happens from there. So what do I think of Evil Dead? Now, this franchise has been really all over the place with me. I really liked the original The Evil Dead. I really liked it a lot. I thought that was a very scary horror film, to be honest, very creative and very original as well. The second one was fine. I don't really care for the second one as much as most people do, to be honest. I know really people love that one a lot, but I just didn't care for it. I find it a bit boring, to be honest, and it's really not all that funny. And Army of Darkness is easily my favorite of the series. I love Army of Darkness. It was everything I think the second one should have been, and, just setting it in medieval times just made it even more better in my opinion. So, now we're here. Now we're at the remake of the original The Evil Dead. And I didn't really care for this one, to be honest. I really didn't. Evil Dead is fine. It's an okay remake. I will admit they pay nice tribute to the original a lot, but what I think they're really missing of what made the original so good was its good characters and its really good story. That's the biggest issue. Well, there's a couple of issues, but my main issue is that the characters are nowhere near as interesting as they were in the original film. Jane Levy's character is really the only character in this movie that I think I really only cared for, to be honest. Everyone else is just kind of boring. And that's a big problem, especially in a horror film where you're supposed to, care for all the characters and, want them to survive. So, yeah, and that's what I think is really missing from this one, from what it did with the original. So, yeah, but I do have some positives with the film, and I'm going to get into those positives first. So, let's get into those positives, shall we? So, here we go with the positives. Now let's get into my positives with the film, and my positives are, first being the acting. I do think the acting is pretty solid. I do think the actors do a pretty solid job in the movie. Like I said, it's really just their characters. I'll get more into that when I talk about the negatives, but the acting's fine, it's pretty good. I do think the actors do a pretty good job acting-wise. I did think they did a pretty good job in the film, especially Jane Levy, who I do think is the best actor in the entire film. I did enjoy her the most, and like I said before, she was the only character I really cared for in the movie, and really the only one that I think had any proper development, to be honest, and really was the only one I ever latched onto, to be honest. So, yeah, Jane Levy, definitely the best thing about this film. She was definitely the best actor in the film. I thought she was easily the best character in the whole movie, too. So, yeah, the acting's not too bad. There are some times where it does get really freaky. I will admit there are some times in this movie where it does get a bit freaky. And I'm like, oh God, what is happening? So there are some moments like that. I will give it that. There are some moments in the film that are like that. I do appreciate the use of practical effects and really fantastic makeup. Honestly, I can give the makeup department very huge props for this movie because they did a really great job. So yeah, I will give major props for using practical effects. and and they're executed very well too, as well, and using makeup effects as well. Not really using CGI all that much, to be honest. They go back to what the roots of the original, just using practical effects and makeup, and I really do appreciate that a lot, honestly. Like, I do think they do a very fantastic job of that. So yeah, really like that a lot about what the film. Some of the writing isn't too bad in the movie. I do think some of the dialogue and stuff like that isn't too bad in the movie. The directing at times can be really good and very beautifully shot, in my opinion. It does have some nice cinematography to it and some nice editing to it at times. So yeah, the directing isn't too bad at times, in my opinion. It is pretty well shot in a few scenes and stuff like that. And lastly, I will say the finale to this movie is amazing. Easily probably my favorite part of the whole film. I really love the finale a lot to this movie. Of course, no spoilers, just in case if you haven't seen it. I know it's been 5 years, but who cares? But the finale to this movie is actually really intense and really frightening, and I actually really liked it a lot, honestly. So, yeah, I'll give major props to that. The finale was honestly really great. I really liked it a lot. So, now let's get to the negatives, because I do have some things to say about this. So let's get to them. Now for the negatives, now for the things I didn't really like all that much about this movie. First being, like I said, the acting is pretty solid in the movie, but the rest of the characters are kind of boring. The rest of the characters I feel like are just kind of there, honestly, just to become victims. That's all I really felt like the characters were there for. I really didn't think they had any proper development besides that. Like, they're just there to be supportive of their friend. That's all I really felt like they were there for. I never really thought they had any proper development, in my opinion. It never really gave me a great reason to care for them, to be honest. So, yeah, I really didn't care for the rest of the characters in this movie. I thought they were just kind of boring, honestly, and I thought they could have been way better, honestly, like, especially, and that's what boggles this movie down a lot for me. I'm really not enjoying it much, because, like, why am I gonna care? Why should I care if I don't care about the characters? You know what I mean? So yeah, the characters are really not all that interesting. The movie relies too heavily on its gore and violence. It really does. Like, to make up for its kind of crappy story, I feel like they're like, oh, like, forgive us for our really boring characters, our really boring story. You like really violent stuff, right? Here's a lot of violence and a lot of gore. Like, I feel like that's all it was there for, just to kind of make up for the really boring characters and the really boring story. But newsflash, violence doesn't make a movie good. A story and its characters do. That's what made the original so good, you know what I mean? Like, the original was very violent, but at least that had good characters and a good story to back it up with it. This doesn't. Like, so it just feels kind of tedious, to be honest. Like, it feels just very kind of, too much, honestly. Like, it relies a bit too much on its violence and gore, and it kind of feels like torture porn at times, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie, honestly. Like, it just relies too heavily on its gore and violence. Like, it just really does, and I'm just like, kind of stop a bit, honestly. Like, it's just very, very just kind of like, okay, like, it's like it's like the filmmakers are like, we need to make up for a really crappy story and a really crappy characters, so let's give them as much violence as they possibly want. And like I said, that doesn't make a movie good, and it certainly doesn't make this movie good. So yeah, it really kind of heavily relies too much on its gore and violence for me. Like I said before, the story is really, really boring, honestly. Like, they do not make it nearly as interesting as it should be, especially considering what material they've got. Like I said, the original is really good, so how could they really, like, honestly, like, the story is just kind of boring. I'm not all that interested into it. Some of the writing is kind of bad, honestly, at times. That was one of my main problems with the original as well, and it kind of shows in this one too. Some of the dialogue isn't that great in this movie at times. Like, there's some lines that some characters say that I'm just like, okay, like, yeah, sometimes the writing isn't all that great. The directing at points can be really crappy, honestly. Like, sometimes this movie can be very poorly filmed. honestly. Like, at points, it can be very beautifully shot and, so nice to look at, and at other times it just feels like it's like a crappy short film, to be honest. Like, it's really, really bad at points, to be honest. Like, I think the directing at times can get really, really bad, to be honest. And yeah, sometimes it can really not look that great, this movie, and it can be really bad. And lastly, this movie moves at such a snail's pace. It's an hour and 31 minutes, yet it feels like 3 hours, to be honest. Like I said, if I'm not going to care about your characters, I'm not going to care about your story, then I'm not really going to care about the movie, to be honest. And for the most part, I really wasn't caring at all, to be honest. I really wasn't all that invested into it for the most part, to be honest. I kind of just wanted it to end. Honestly, like, it was just kind of a drag to sit through, to be honest. I really kind of wasn't all that interested in the movie, to be honest. So, yeah, the pacing is really bad. So overall, Evil Dead, I wouldn't say this is a bad remake by any means necessary, but at the same time, it's really not all that great either. I think it's just alright. Honestly, like, it's not the best, but it ain't the worst either. But I really didn't care for this movie all that much. Of course, I wouldn't like the two most praised ones in the franchise, the second one and the remake. Of course, right? But no, just overall, I didn't really care for this movie. I think, like I said before, the movie has some really boring characters, really boring story, really relies a little bit too much on its gore and violence, and I just really wasn't all that invested into this film. I think they could have done so much better with this one, to be honest. So yeah, I guess it's time for my official grade. My official grade on Evil Dead is a C plus. Like I said before, it's fine. It's very forgettable in my opinion. I've already forgotten about it mostly. Honestly, after watching it, to be honest, it's really a forgettable movie, and it's probably my least favorite out of the ones I've watched, to be honest. So, yeah, overall, Evil Dead, it really isn't that good in my opinion, and I really didn't enjoy it all that much. So, yeah, it gets a C plus. And we did it. That's it. We did it. We reviewed all the Evil Dead movies. It took us about like 4 years to do it, but we did. We reviewed every single Evil Dead movie. Yeah, it's been fun. I've never really done something like this before, where I review each movie like each year, like from a franchise. I review one movie for each year. Like, I've never really done that before, and I'm glad this turned out well. I really enjoyed doing this. This was nice, it was simple. There was only 4 movies in this franchise, so figured why not? And look at where we are now. We've officially rounded out all of them. I would like to thank you all for watching all those reviews throughout the years. So yeah, thanks. This was really fun, and hopefully you enjoyed this nice little Halloween special I did for you. So now I leave the question to you. What do you think of the remake of Evil Dead? Please leave in the comment section below. And I'm FilmFan0599, and I hope you have a spooky time this Halloween. See you later.